Badge layout, so this is for your badge templates. Do you have a
Yeah, there should be
badge
one
that we-
template in there.
Okay. So we can take a look at that. So that's connected. Oh, there it goes. So here are your badge layouts. So if you had badge layouts in the system, it's going to list them all here. So there's one in here. You can click edit. So this is where you could configure your badge layouts. You can bring in different elements, shapes, static text, images, static images, and then you have your template fields here, which are dynamic. So these are pulling from fields that are in the S2 system. So on the actual person page or card holder page, it has a number of different fields which these are referencing. And then you can just, drag and drop. Bring in photos, signatures, user-defined fields. Pretty much most of the elements on the card holder page you can bring into the badge template. And then down below you have smart elements, barcodes and mag stripes. You can, if you had a barcode you wanted to associate with the template, if you wanted to, have it print a barcode every time it prints out of the printer, you could set up the template with that barcode. So these are just simple drag and drop. So if you want to put a field on the template, you just drag it over, put it in place, and then you'll have properties over here that you can configure that element with. So if you wanted to, change the border color or the text color, or the font, or there's a number of different options here.
Was this previously a different app?
Yes. So this is the new badging software that we have available. So if you're using the older software, you'll have a different application where you manage the templates, and the badging piece in general is a little bit different than the new software.
So I think the version you need to be on to have this available within the S2 app is 4.9.
Yes.
And there's a license flag that needs to be changed, so you'd have to contact us. We can get that changed for you.
Are you guys still using the older badging?
I don't know what app we needed, but yes.
So you have like a old
We have the template saved in there, we can't do anything with it.
Oh, okay.
So,
So you just haven't edited a template in a while?
yeah.
Yeah, it runs on like a separate workstation. It was more of a like an older architecture. This is just built in the browser and stuff.
Yeah, that's the benefit of the newer software. It's all built into the browser. You can go and pretty much open up any web browser and make changes to the template. You can do your printing from pretty much any browser.
Makes sense.
And if you guys are already licensed for it, then just reach out to Mike at Access and we'll get that transferred over.
Yeah, in a coming version 2, the old badging is no longer gonna be supported, so there will come a point where you'll have to switch over.
I see.
Do you guys have any questions about the badge layouts? I mean, there's a number of different things that you can do in here. You can build it in such a way that things are conditional based on something. You have maybe a field that indicates this person's an employee versus a contractor. You can have that template change to, from this to that based on that field change.
What do you just buy the
the card, and it prints right on the card with the color
Yep.
printer, is that all it is?
Yep, exactly. So yeah, I mean, this is designed for printing your badges on a badge printer. So you would, design your layout here, and then, when a new person needs a badge issued, they would, be, assigned a photo and so on and so forth, and then you would print it out. And that template would be what displays in the badge.
So a lot of companies, kind of to Nate's point, a lot of companies will have a different template for the type of employee that would easily identify them as a contractor or a permanent employee or a temporary employee, maybe by an outline border or a background color or something, because their badges are gonna be displayed. So you might have one set up for each, type of personnel, and then you just associate that badge design with that person, and you can print it out from there.
Gotcha.
Can you talk about the badge workflows and like marking a new photo and stuff for people?
Yep. So the next section is the badge workflow. So in the badge workflow, you have a couple of different things. It first shows you a list of people that either are needing to be printed or photos taken, or they have been and it's waiting for approval. This workflow is configurable. But basically, this allows you to look at who might be pending a photo, who might be pending a badge print, which are those options are configurable on the person page. When you add a new person to the system, you can say, okay, I'm going to mark them. If they need a photo and they need a badge print, somebody can check that. If they don't have a badge printer, maybe you do central badge printing. Some customers do badge printing centrally. And they use this workflow heavily. If you're not necessarily set up to do central printing where you're printing for multiple sites, you could opt to use this page, or you can print directly from the person page, which we'll show you in a moment. But basically, this allows you to see the records that are pending some type of approval in the badge print workflow. This one's waiting for an approval. So basically, this workflow is set up for once the badge gets printed, it's pending on somebody to actually approve it and add the credential and the card number into the system.
Do you send that through email to somebody? How does that get approved? Like, is it somebody would be?
It's local on the system, so it's designed for a badging administrator to log in here. They can bulk print these, and then they can assign the badge number. We'll get into in a moment, but they can assign the credential to the person, and then click approve down here, which indicates the badge came out, it looks correct. They can click approve, and then that basically ends the workflow process for that. And there's a number of different things that you can configure in here. You can set it, your default badge layout, so you can set it to the one that we were just in as the default layout. You can select a default printer. So when you bulk print these, they'll all go to the same printer. An enrollment reader is a card reader that you can select as the enrollment reader. So basically, when the card comes out of the printer, you just scan it on that enrollment reader, and it will assign that card to the person. And then the format's the bit structure on that particular card. You can set that in here as well. And then these are for your photo aspect ratio and signature aspect ratio. And then some options down here are for your capture. So there's another piece of software for capturing photos. You can, I think that works different setup for it, but we can take a look at the capture. But basically, it's a piece of software when you want to take somebody's photo that pops up on the screen. You have somebody sit in front of the camera. You take the photo and it auto crops, and you can, you know, move the image around to get it correct, and then you can save it. And then down here below, you have no credential for photo badge. So if you're printing, maybe you're printing badges out of the system that don't necessarily have a credential. You know, maybe it's a visitor pass or something like that. It doesn't have, you know, it's not going to do anything at the card reader. You can tell it, you know, if this isn't a credential. And then auto approve down at the bottom if you don't want to approve the badge at the end of the process. If you just want to make assumptions once it comes off the printer that it's, you know, good, you can click this and it will automatically approve the workflow.
Is that global or is that just in this workflow screen?
That's global, so that's going to apply to the person record as well if you're printing from the person record. Data operations is used to basically make bulk changes to the system. You can import card holders and make changes to the card holders in bulk. It uses a CSV or a TSV, you know, delimited text file. So you know, have a, you know, you can have an Excel spreadsheet full of, you know, new users you want to add them to the system. You can set that up and upload it through this function. This is kind of what it looks like, though. If I were to open this up in Excel, there would be one line with a command, add person, their first name and last name. You can add a bunch of different fields to it if you want to populate those in the system. But you could use this to add new people, make changes to people. Maybe you're assigning a new access level to a bunch of people. You can do that with this tool.
One thing that I want to mention here is, if you remember back to the person IDs on the person record, if you're going to be importing modifications to existing person records, the key to do the update is that person ID. So it's one reason why you'd want to have those be unique.
Evacuations, if your system's configured with evacuation plans and mustering, which we can get into in a little bit, you can start or end an evacuation plan in here. But you can basically set up the system in a way where it's accounting for who's in the facility. You can create evacuation plans to basically account for, you know, people that might be in the facility. So if you have, for instance, if you have a fire alarm, you can have people muster out of the building. So they're either, you know, scanning a card reader or using our mobile application to indicate that the person has exited the building. And then you can get a count of, you know, who's left in the building. You can see who those people are. But again, your system has to be, you know, configured to have that option function properly. Lost card, haven't really touched on credentials yet, but basically this feature is designed for if you happen to find a card, somebody dropped their card on the floor, maybe you don't print badges so you don't know who that card belongs to, you can go in here and either type in the number that's on the back of it and click search, and it will bring up the person that that card belongs to, or you can click use reader, select the reader you want to scan, click go, and then you scan that reader and then it will pop up the person that that card's assigned to. but it's just, designed to be a quick way to kind of figure out who a card belongs to. More relevant if you're not printing cards. Add people, we did touch on this when we added you, had you add yourself this morning, but pretty self-explanatory. You click add, people add. This is where you would add your card holders, first name, last name. Activation date and time by default is going to be the current date and time.
You can branch into templates.
What's that?
You can show them a template.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any configured, but we can
Oh, they don't have
we
it.
can touch on that. Expiration date and time. This is if you had a set expiration date and time, you wanted that record to expire. You could configure that in the system when you're adding the person. You can obviously do it afterwards as well. And then the person ID. So this can be configured a few different ways in this system. The person ID is typically a unique identifier for the person or the record. We typically recommend using an employee ID number or something that you're already using that might uniquely identify the person. That's typically the recommendation. If you don't have such a number in place that you assign to people, you can either type something in here that will be unique, or allow the system to automatically generate the number. You can set the system up so that it will automatically populate that with some number. It's based on a sequential ordering in the system. So if your system's populating this automatically, if the last one was 11, the next one's going to be 12, so on and so forth. So there are a couple of different ways this can be configured. You can set it up so that you can't have any duplicates in the system, which is typically advised. We usually want this to be unique, as Mike mentioned, that data operations tool. If I wanted to make a bulk change to somebody, we're using this ID number to make that change to those people. So it is kind of important, especially if you're using data operations, or if you want to integrate with maybe your HR system, or Active Directory down the road, or you want to have some integration down the road that manages or make changes to card holders. That field's kind of important to plan for in advance. The notes field is just like it says. If you want to put a note on that record, you can add that there. And then over here on the left, you have a couple of different menus. You have information. So these are user-defined fields in the system. So you can define up to 20 different fields in your system to hold whatever data you're looking to hold on that person. So maybe you have a field that says department. You have one that says title, location, type. You can have all of those fields set in here, and you can configure what these field labels are in the system.
You can run reports on these as
You
well.
can.
That's the important thing.
Can you use this to give access to certain areas or anything like that? So if we were to say,
So this section wouldn't be used for that. That would be under access levels, which we'll jump into in a moment.
But you can put consultants, visitors, contractors,
Yep,
things like
exactly.
that in there.
Yep, you can put the type. So you can change this from a text field to a drop-down list, or you can change it to a number or a Boolean, yes, no, checkbox. So these are configurable to what you're trying to get or populate the system with for the card holders.
Very often I see things like employee ID in these fields, or some value that you want to populate the barcode on the badge. Maybe it would be like the title, department, type of thing. So you can pull these onto the badges. Even the data that can be in the mag stripe on the card is often in these fields.
So you have up to 20 of those, and then down below that you have contact. So these are in the system for you to use by default. So you can plug in the person's phone number, their email, their SMS, text address, their location, other contact, like an emergency contact. You can plug in here with their telephone number, and then vehicles. If you want to track your cardholder vehicles, you can also plug those in here as well. And you can put the the make, model, color, license plate info in here if you want. So once the information has been populated, you click save, which would save it in the system like we did earlier. One thing that I haven't mentioned is there is also a template that you can create. So in your system, you can create templates for person records, which will populate some of these fields for you, so you're not having to do it every time. Jump over to templates real
So
quick.
it's actually very useful if you're adding a lot of, I'm adding a contractor, I'm adding the person in the IT department, I'm adding, a person that's gonna work out of this building. You can set up default templates with default access control levels and different things that auto-populate once you select that template. Kind of a predefined jump start to adding that person in the system.
So say this was your type field, you populate it with employee, and then now if I go, it's not showing you. What's that?
There it is.
Yeah. I'm just trying to get rid of this so it's not overlaying on top of my menu. So if you have a template set up in your system, or you configure a template, it will show up here as a drop down. You can select that template, and then whatever you would set that template or configure it with will apply to the record. So I just put the user-defined field number 1 as employee, but you could set other things in there, expiration dates, access levels, whatever. You can set in that template. So the next item on the menu is credentials. If you click credentials, it will show you this here, and this is where you would actually add your cards. So we call them credentials because credentials can be a number of different things. It could be an RFID card. It could be a facial recognition, biometric,
Key fob.
key fob, a number of different things. Some customers are using, license plate recognition now with the access control. It could be a license plate entry.
Could be
Yep. Mobile credentials.
Prox wafer,
Yep.
all kinds of different credentials.
So you would, typically you would enter the number that's on the badge here in this encoded number field. There's also another field, if we click this little menu down here, called the hot stamp. So the number that's on the back of the badge, that's typically what you would consider the hot stamp. So
Oh, it's a test one.
There's one behind the printer that actually has a hot stamp on it.
here we go. So here's your RFID badge. The number down here This number right here would be your hot stamp, which would be plugged in there. Typically, what the card is actually encoded with and what's printed here are the same. So your encoded number would typically be the same as your hot stamp. However, some customers order these so that the number on the badge is not the same as the number that is encoded. So that's where you would have a different encoded number than what's printed on the badge. It's typical that they're usually the case. They're the same. The credential format is referring to the format of the badge or the bit structure that the actual badge is using. So that would, you would select the format, the credential format for the badge you're programming. Expiration date, you can put an expiration date on the credential itself. It doesn't necessarily expire everything else that the person has assigned to them, but it will expire the credential. So if the person has multiple credentials assigned to them, and you put an expiration date here, it's only going to expire that credential. It's not going to expire anything else. So you can add multiple credentials to a person. And then the status, if you're adding a new card, typically you'll set it to active. And then over here to the right, there's a read button. If you click the read button, it's going to allow you to select a reader from your system. So you would select that reader, you would click go, you would go scan the card on the reader, and it will populate all this information for you automatically based on that read. I think Mike's going to show. There you go. So there's Mike's card. So if you have a reader or an enrollment reader set up where you do your badging, it comes in handy. So you're not having to type that information in by hand. It eliminates potential errors. Typing it in. If you put a 2 instead of a 1, obviously the badge isn't going to work. But if we do it with a card read, it will populate that information for you. And then remote lock set. This is for remote, what we call remote lock sets. They're basically locks that are all-in-one units that can install on the door. They can be either wireless or operate over PoE or power over Ethernet, but they're not conventional readers. But you can set a user for those lock sets here if you have those in use at your facility. Down below the credentials, you have a settings section. The first option here is regional anti-passback privileges. I'm not sure if any of you are using this at your facilities, but anti-passback is basically a rule or a set of rules you can implement at your facility where if you want to restrict somebody from sharing their card with the person behind them, you can implement anti-passback. So think of it as if you walk through the door and then you hand your card back to the person behind you. So you had a turnstile or something like that set up at your facility. If you handed that card back to them, they could enter the facility with your card. Anti-passback prevents that from happening. And then there's another rule that kind of falls into that called tailgating. So if you have a facility set up where you have multiple layers of security or access points to get into your facility, so you have maybe you have a gate entrance and then you have main entrance into the building. If you didn't badge into the gate when you came in, the tailgating rule won't let you badge into the front door. So here you can set that privilege for the user. By default, if your system's set up with anti-passback, the rule's going to apply to the user. But if you don't want it to apply to the user, you want to change how that rule is applied to that specific person, you can go in here and you can exempt the person. You can select hard always, which means they're going to be denied when they invoke that rule, or soft always, which means that when they invoke that rule, it's going to log it in the system, but they'll still be granted access. And based on that the anti-passback rules getting invoked, you can have alerts being sent to people. You can have events show up on the screen and so on and so forth. Notify on expirations. So if you use expiration dates in your system, you can set up notification groups of people you want to notify when the record's nearing expiration or when it expires. So you can set up a group of people that you want to have notified when the record's expiring. Here you would select the notification group that would be notified when this record's either nearing expiration or it's expiring. Exempt from credential non-use rules. So you can set up your system to deactivate cards if they're not used after a period of time. So you can set up your system to say, if somebody doesn't use their card within 90 days, the card's going to deactivate automatically. So you can set that up as a rule in your system. If you want to exempt the person from that rule, this is where you would select that, exempt from credential non-use rule, and it would exempt that person. So when 90 days hits, they haven't used their badge, it's still going to be active. Use extended unlock. So extended unlock is a feature that we have that when a user scans a portal or a door, that door stays open a little bit longer based on how the portal is configured. That door can stay open longer for that person. So you would select use extended unlock. The typical use case for that scenario is for maybe somebody that's handicapped or somebody that needs a little extra time to get through a door. You would check use extended unlock, and when they scan that door, it will give them more time to get through that door. And then trace this person. You could click. You could select that on a person if you're maybe wanting to track their activity. You want to get notified when that person uses their badge. You could click trace person, and it would trigger an event which would send you a notification when that person uses their badge. Typical use cases if you're maybe trying to look for somebody, or you don't know where somebody is in the facility that you're trying to find, and you want to try to figure out where they are, or if you don't want them to use the badge. PIN number, if you're using dual factor authentication, meaning your doors are using a card swipe and a PIN number, you can set that PIN number here. Plug in the PIN number. And then over here, if you want to exempt a person from using a PIN so they don't have to put in a PIN number, you can do that. You can do that as well. jumped into the next section, access levels. So this is where you would actually assign what doors that the person would have access to. And we do that based on access levels. And we also have what's called access level groups. So you can create a grouping of these and create an access level group that you can assign to somebody. So basically how access levels work is they're assigned either a single reader or a group of readers, and then you can assign other attributes to those access levels, like time specs. If you only want the access level to work, during normal business hours, you could apply a time spec to the access level that will only allow it to be used during a certain period of time. Threat levels you can apply to access levels as well. But this is where you would assign the access level. So if you had maybe an employee access level, you would assign here, which would give an employee their access, and then you maybe have another access level for contractors that you would assign, so on and so forth. But pretty simple, just select the access level you want, click the arrow, it applies it, and you just click save, and it saves it to that record.
Same thing with the credential, with the access level, you guys can make access level expire. Which you see, just like when he was doing the credential, you can click and say, oh, I'm gonna assign this access level, but it's just temporary. So I might give somebody access to that door, but have it expire on Friday. And then there's the auto remove feature here that if you wanted to stay in the record but then just deactivate, or if you wanted to auto remove. And the reason why that's important is if you find that you use reports that show, hey, who has this access level? If you don't tell it to auto remove, that'll show up for them whether it's active or not. Right? So that's why that's there.
So this is what Mac was referring to, your activation. So if you want to maybe delay when that access level becomes active for that person, you can assign an activation date in the future. And then maybe you only want that access level to be assigned for a temporary period of time. You can put an expiration date on the access level itself. So when it reaches that expiration date, the access level will be deactivated, so you won't have access to that area anymore. And then the auto remove, as Mac mentioned, once it reaches that expiration date, the access level will no longer appear on the person's profile. So I just pull up a person page. So we just moved to the people search. So we click people search. It's going to pull up this this people search, these people search fields. So now you have the ability to search for people in the system based on criteria. Maybe you're looking for somebody specific, you could put in their name or their badge number, or maybe you're searching for employees. You could search based on that criteria here, and then once you've filled out the criteria, you just click search, and it's going to give you the result of that search. If you don't want to put in a criteria, you can just click search. It's going to show you everybody. And then, so this will give you the results of your search. Gives you the person's name, the photo, if there is one associated. if there's an expiration date, it will list it here. Modified is when they were last, the record was last modified, date and time. Username, so these are for people that have login rights to the S2 system. If they have a username associated, it will show up in this column. And then access levels, this will give you a list of their access levels that they have assigned. Card numbers, gives you a list of their card numbers and then the card format. So once you have the results here, you find somebody that you want to make a change to, you just click on their name, pulls up their record, and then you can make the change to the record. Some sections we haven't touched on yet are badging and login. So badging, if you added a new record to the system and you don't necessarily do the badging piece, somebody else maybe prints the badge, you can check on request badge print, which adds it to that badge workflow that we were in earlier. If you do the badge printing and you don't want to use the workflow, you don't need to check that box. Down below here where it says badge print count, this is the number of times the person has had a badge printed for them. So it will give you a count here of how many times the person's had a badge print. The badge layout is what we were on earlier. You can select the layout that you want to assign to that person. Credential, so this is if you have a credential badge you're printing, you can select the format here. If you don't have maybe it's a non-credential badge, you can click non-credential, and then the card printer, so this will give you a list of your printers associated with the system. You select the printer that you're going to print to, and you can save the record, and then you can click photo, print photo ID, which when you click that, it's going to send it to the printer. So maybe this is a new record, doesn't have a photo assigned to it yet. You need to associate a photo with the record. You would click up here, the little edit icon on the photo. You can click request new photo if it's somebody else's responsibility to take the photos. Maybe the HR people will put this information in. They don't take photos, they don't print the badges, but if that needs to be done for this person, you can click, that person can click request new photo, which will cause that record to show up on the badge print workflow. Upload, if you have a JPEG image from a camera that you just want to upload into the system, you can just click upload. And it will let you select that photo from the file system on the PC.
Yeah.
So for anybody that's doing badge printing from the system, they're maybe not familiar with the badge software or the new badge software, I would suggest taking a look at that workstation once Mike gets it going to see how that capture software works. It's really designed to work if you have a capture camera on the PC. If you're using a separate camera, you're taking photos from your phone or something like that. Maybe you're just doing an upload versus a capture, which some users do. But the capture software does come in handy, to crop the image to size and whatnot. And then we have the delete option here if you wanted to remove the photo from the record, you can click delete and that will obviously delete it. And then down here is the signature section. Some customers have a requirement to put or store signatures in the system. They might have a signature capture device, one of those Topaz signature devices. You could connect to this and capture signatures, or if you have a way to upload those, you can do that.
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
Get it figured out?
Yeah, it might have been that everybody's sitting on the same record and we were trying to edit that record.
In the login page, which we were on earlier, this is where you would set the user accounts for people that log into the system. Depending on your level of privilege in the system, you may or may not see this page or this section. But if you're tasked with assigning new user roles, this would be where you do that. You would put the username and password in, and select their user role. There can be other user roles called custom user roles. You can build in the system and assign to the person, and they would show up on this list here. Alarm filter group. In the system configuration, you can configure what we call alarm filters and alarm filter groups, which allows users to only see certain alarms. You can assign that to the user right here. And then default widget desktop. So if you've created a widget desktop for maybe your security guards, you could assign that to the user directly here. You can also assign the widget desktop or a group of widget desktops to user roles, so they would have access to those. And then custom menu. I haven't touched on custom menu yet, but there's an option in the system to have a custom menu. And when I reference custom menu, it's one of these up here. For some reason I can't see it. I should have tried logging back. So right now I don't have any custom menus set, but I could set a custom menu for my account if I wanted to. So you can configure a menu with only certain objects you want that person to see or use, and then you can assign that menu to the user or to the user role if you're using custom user roles. And there's a default one called user tasks. I can save, and then when I log out and log back in, I'll see another menu. So here's the custom user menu. And there's 5 different objects in there, but you can configure that menu for your users, and you could optionally restrict them just to that menu if you just wanted them to see certain objects. You could do that, or if you want to assign your own custom menu for the objects that you're most frequently using, you can build your own custom menu and assign it to your user account. we have the capture working?
It is, yeah.
So, before I get into the other sections on the administration menu, I'll have you guys go ahead and assign a photo and an access level to your record. So once your record's been saved and you want to go ahead and click print photo ID, we'll see what comes out of the printer.